Hello YouTube. In this video we're going to be talking about boomers. Now this isn't going to be directly correlated with lifting, it's going to be more of a cultural video, if you will. More in line with the one I did about swole shaming. And you're going to see that actually the two topics correlate on certain levels. Because today I want to discuss the topic of boomer kind and the damage that they've done to us, the generation that comes after them, but also what they've done to gym culture as a whole. Because even though you might take them for irrelevant old farts, you're going to see that they actually have a lot of power on culture in general because they are technically our elders, and therefore we are inheriting the words that they created for ourselves. It's in a sense our heritage. But you'll see that the state of what they are leaving us is not in the best of shapes, and we're having to deal with the consequences today. So, before I start, I want to say that when I say boomer, I use the term boomer in line with the meme and not the actual definition of the generation. I'm not talking about people who were born during the baby boom at all. I'm talking about a very specific type of older gentlemen. And in reality, the age doesn't matter that much, meaning that you don't need to be 60 to be a gym boomer, you don't need to be even 50 or 40. You can be in your 30s and be a boomer. And you're going to see that with the description I make of them, you're going to immediately be able to think back to people you know, people you met at your gym that qualify as quintessential boomers. Because in reality, if I say boomer, a lot of people are going to get upset because they're going to think that I'm talking about our elders, okay, or the people who precede us, the old lifters. And that's not true at all. I'm not attacking old people. I'm attacking boomers. Really, there's a difference here. And I know that the difference has been muddied a bit by Zoomers, who are also to blame, and I'll make a video about them eventually, where there has been this entire thing going around with the okay boomer meme, which in reality is just a way for young people to invalidate and disqualify anything something older than them can say on basis of them being old and being out of touch. And I understand how frustrating that meme and that ad hominem can be to deal with. I'm going to be honest with you, all of these videos about like the 20-year-old, the 17-year-old who say, okay, boomer, with a smug look on their face, I also want to summon the wrath of all gods and slap them across the face. It's a natural reflex, and I actually admire boomers for their self-restraint, because to me, you would be justified in grabbing a chair and breaking it on their backs. It's what that level of annoyance. And there is really no basis and value behind the okay boomer meme. But you'll see that actually there are a lot of things I'm going to attack boomers on that might make you believe that there is some truth to the meme. Because stereotypes, jokes, as offensive as they can be, even if they target a certain group of people, even if the group is supposedly weak, also often are rooted in truth and reality. Sometimes they over exaggerate, but it always comes from somewhere. You rarely get attacked out of the blue. So it's not really a clash of generation video, okay? I don't want to pin young lifters and old lifters. It's not what I want. What I want is a united community, but boomers make it completely impossible because the stigma attached to their status and their very existence is actually a cultural matter, as I said at the start of the video, just like swole shaming. It all comes down to culture, and I want to discuss it at length. This video is going to be dedicated to that. It's going to be a pure piece on boomer. That's it. It's going to be boomer philosophy 101 and everything pertaining to these people. Before I start, it's interesting to note that the type of people that I qualify as boomers, as I say, range in age group, but they also tend to be flimsy on the spectrum of where they belong in gym culture because they tend to not be powerlifters, they tend to not really be bodybuilders, they sort of just go to the gym for fitness and for health, but we'll see that later on that this is nonsense, they don't actually go to the gym for that. So, if we're talking about boomer, if I tell you, okay, think about a boomer, what comes in your head? Well, if you've spent enough time on 4chan, it should be the image from the meme. The guy with almost no hair, thin hair, and with poor skin, bad teeth, with sometimes a monster energy drink in their hands, who is usually overweight. That's what the meme depicts boomers as. And it's actually fairly accurate. Again, stereotypes exist for a reason. But in terms of reality, if I tell you, hey, think about a boomer, you're most likely going to think back to some guy that you met in your gym. Some dude that at some point most likely approached you unprompted and started yapping your ears off. That guy was a boomer. He could have been just 2 years older than you, he's still a boomer. And they exist in every single gym. I have never been to a gym where there's not at least one of them. It's like there's a quota where you need to have one boomer for the average population to maintain itself. And all they do, from my personal experience, is that they just talk. They come to you and they start talking. And we're going to discuss their center of interest pretty soon. But it sometimes is tough to determine who is a boomer and who is not a boomer, because as I said, it's not necessarily about age. You could meet a guy who's 70, he could be a top chap and not a boomer at all. You could meet a guy who's 26 and he could be a massive boomer. So you have to be on your guard. You never know when you're going to be attacked by a wild boomer in an environment that is not 100% under control, right? The gym is like the jungle. And a boomer, if I were to make a comparison, is not like a panther or a tiger. It's more like a wild hog that just shows off out of nowhere and is just going to stay in your path and be annoying. They're not really dangerous, at least on a physical level, but in terms of culture and the damage they do to the younger generation, they are actually quite potent. Because what makes the boomer so special is, as I said, not its look or age, it's its mindset. Boomer is a mindset. And you can be a boomer in many ways. I personally am a boomer in terms of clothing. I dress like a boomer. For some people, it's going to be that fiscally you behave like a boomer. And all of these things can be great. But the one place, the one area in your life where you don't want to be a boomer is in the gym. This is the one thing you want to avoid at all costs. Because it's going to be that stereotypical guy who's going to approach you at the gym and who's going to say the exact same line every single time. I swear, these guys are like NPCs. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a factory out there that produces them. Actually, there is such a factory. It's called Modern Society. But in terms of what they tell you, you already know what I'm going to share with you guys because you have been exposed to the disease that is boomers. What do they say when they talk to you? What do they say? They don't even say hello, nice to meet you. What is the first thing that comes out of their mouth? I used to bench X amount of weight, or I used to squat this much, or oh, you bench this, I used to bench this plus 10 pounds. It's always going to be about them and it's always going to be a brag. Always. They always find a way to outdo you. You know those one-uppers that you all hate, that you have in your friend group. There's always one per friend group, that if you say a story, they're going to have a better story, just slightly better than yours. That's boomers. Boomers appear like genies out of thin air to tell you that they used to bench 500 pounds. And it's always interesting to see that this is a cultural experience that almost everyone has had. Meaning that if you lift, at some point this happened to you. And it's not like there's one guy that takes a plane from state to state and country to country to say those things. It's a different guy every single time. And yet they all behave the same way. They might not look alike, but they all behave the exact same way. And they always also are out of shape. It's another thing with boomers. Most likely if you met a guy who's in his 40s and 50s, in his late 30s too, who's in top shape, they're not going to say shit like this. Why? Well, because you can tell with your eyes that they lift. They don't have to convince you of it. The entire LARP about telling you what they used to do is because they're forced to present to you a reality that your eyes cannot decipher. Because if you looked at them, you would just think, oh, you're just a fat dude who eats hot dogs and watches baseball. You're not a lifter. You come to the gym to creep on women, and that's pretty much that. And that's what they do for the most part. So he has to posture, he has to present that factitious experience that he's never had, because a ton of the time, these are just lies. And it's always lies too about what they used to do. Like, if you had someone show up and tell you, I can bench 500, surely you would tell him, okay, show me. You can bench 500. Show me. It would be cool to see. I personally saw one guy in my entire life with my own two eyes bench 500. It's actually very impressive. But the thing, see, is that if they tell you they used to do that, now they get all of the benefits and they get to brag without having to be put on the spot. Because they can just tell you, oh, I used to, so I can't anymore. And it's always funny too, because these guys that apparently bench 500 now can barely bench one plate and or don't bench at all because they are injured, they have a bad shoulder. And on top of that, when you see them train, they lift baby weight or they lift with terrible form and they cheat and they do that much range of motion. So it's interesting that that person apparently went from what is essentially a world record, because 500 pounds is not something to scoff at, to now barely being able to move their body. Interesting. And yet, it's their lie, and it's the lie that we hear all the time, to the point that I'm thinking, is there a website out there like www.boomer.com that gives you like the best one-liner to feed people if you're a boomer? I don't know, there might be such a thing. But again, it's always unprompted, because most likely your first instinct seeing that dude was not, wow, I'm impressed by his beer belly, let me ask him advice. No, he came to you. So already that's strange, right? When in life is this acceptable? Do you often go up to people in real life and say, hey, I used to have good grades in college? No, why? Because they don't give a fuck. And also you're bothering people for nothing. Only in the gym is that type of boomer energy allowed. It's like it's that one space to express themselves. And in truth, I understand why. It's because most of these guys are just beaten down dogs at home where they can't say shit to their wife or their kids. So they have to, at some point in their life, discuss things with people. And the second you give them an ability to open their mouth, they have to present themselves as the top dog, because their life doesn't reflect that. It's really sad in reality to be a boomer. You don't want to be that guy. And I have many stories like this. I'm sure you guys have them too. If you want to share them in the comments, let me know. Let us know. But my favorite story of all time that concerns boomer kind was one time a dude who approached me. I was squatting like 3 plates, which is nothing, and he started telling me how much he could squat. And because I wanted to see how much he was going to say, I didn't give him any indication, and I told him, oh yeah, this is pretty weak, because he had no idea what 3 plates represented. He didn't lift. And so I wanted to hear how much he would tell me he could squat. Guess what the dude told me? Dude told me that he could squat 1,200 pounds. So of course I was a little bit curious. I was like, oh, how? Like in which federation? What equipment did you use? And he told me, oh, no equipment, just barefoot. So essentially what the dude was telling me is that he squatted a world record squat 20 years ago, when it would have been like shattering the world record by 400 pounds. And this is pretty par for the course for boomers, because they don't know enough to be able to lie accurately. But the worst part is that you can't call them out on it, because you don't accomplish anything when you do so. It's the reason why also the guy who used to bench 500 pounds, yeah, he used to bench 500 pounds. There's no discussion here. What do you want me to do with that information? Because every single time they have no proof. That's what gets me to like, okay, so you broke a world record and there's somehow no record of it. There's no picture, no video. Your name is not on it. Like, some of these guys behave as if they lifted back in the Stone Age. Like, they lifted with Ooga Booga, and therefore, of course, there was no cameras. But we have videos of powerlifters from 30 years ago. It's not like it's impossible. So it's my issue with them too. They're not really part of the culture. They just sneak in once a week to bother people who actually lift, and then they leave. And you might tell me, okay, but that's anecdotal. Like, who cares about that? It's just a guy who is going to bother you for 10 minutes and you tell him, go fuck yourself, and he leaves. Well, it's more pernicious than that, you see, because as I said, it's not about age. If it were just about age, I could just tell you, ignore old people and you would be fine. It's most likely something that you already do. But it's related to culture, and therefore it transcends the barrier of age. Because even though no one cares about their stories, they still say it, showing that it's hiding something deeper. They say the stories that I said because they want to get props for something they never did. And they want to get those props because they understand that being strong and big is cool, right? It's perfectly normal. And of course, I feel the same way. I love strength and I love size. But because they want to look better, they lie. And that's when the problem lays, because one, for the noobs and uninitiated out there, they create completely crazy standards because they just invent numbers. And on top of that, they're very toxic in their approach. I have seen multiple times boomers trying to bring me or other people down with things saying like, oh, when I was your age, I lifted more. When I was your age, I was bigger. And you might think that it's nothing, but I want you to put yourself in the shoes of the guy who does it. What is the point of some 45-year-old going on Instagram and looking at a kid who deadlifts 600 pounds and saying, oh, when I was your age, I could deadlift more than you and I was actually in a lower weight class? But again, there's no proof and no one cares. So why does that person feel the need to do that? Well, it's because, again, they have such a low self-worth that they feel forced to go to that extent. But the problem is that this is what creates the clash of generations. This is what creates the okay boomer memes. When you're exposed times and times again to bitter and jaded older men, you start having an adverse relationship with them and you reject them altogether. And this is where I'm starting to unravel the cultural problem that we're dealing with, and I think you understand where I'm getting at. When you have dudes constantly flexing on you, guys much older than you, telling you I used to be bigger than you, and what do they say? Back in the days we had no supplements, and after the gym I had to chase down a deer for 5 miles, kill it and eat its raw flesh for protein. It's like the stories your grandpa used to tell you about how he had to go to school and I had to walk 50 miles and I was chased by wolves. Okay, sure. But all of that is just sometimes true, but it's also a fabrication of sorts, all for the sake of one thing: presenting their generation as having it rougher than we. And it's something that boomers say all the time. They say, oh, kids these days have it so easy and they complain so much. It's the entire thing with like the avocado toast and boomers saying just get a job. When in reality, in real life, right, we're talking about actual boomers in real life, they had the easiest life out there. They were both during the easiest generation. They had a ton of jobs. College was dirt cheap. The houses cost basically like three paper towels. And then they destroyed this entire system and thing with their greed, and they left us with the shitty remains. And now we are at fault for not liking what is left. It's sort of the same with gym boomers too. They are behaving and acting as if the way we are right now is not directly their fault. But you're going to see that it is their fault. And just to wrap it up, I always found it funny when people brag about old glory. I've never understood that. Like, why do I care that you used to be big? Right now, you're not big. And the only thing I care about is what I can see with my two eyes. To me, if you don't have pictures of video evidence or anecdotal testimonies from people who are actually, trustworthy, then all of what you accomplished doesn't exist. Like, pics or didn't happen is the motto I live my life by. And it's the same for boomers. To me, there is no worth in that beyond, as I said, trying to prop themselves up and make other people feel bad, which, if you think back, that's most of gym culture. Most of gym culture is that, is trying to push people down and make them feel shitty about themselves because you yourself feel shitty. If you loved yourself and you were confident, you would try to actually help people bring out their worth and feel confident. Only people who feel terrible about themselves feel the need to do that. And this is where we meet a sort of separation, because I just depicted one type of boomer, but they're not all like this. Meaning that not all old men are like this. You also have old dudes who end up being respectable father figures or grandpa figures, whatever you want to call it. And that's what I was getting at too earlier. Because of boomers' behavior, it becomes tough for young men to relate, because how can you relate and look up to someone who has an adversarial relationship to you and seem to be constantly attacking you for your youth and your potential that they don't have anymore? Well, it's not always true. Sometimes we have these types. And I'm sure you can think back in your life to people who are much older than you that you still connected with and vibed with because they were worthy leaders and they actually showed an example that you wanted to emulate. And I have some of these on my channel, actually. I have a ton of dudes who are in their 70s and who lift. And to these guys, I say you have all of my respect. Hats off to you. I wish I could be like you. I wish I could live to my 70s and 80s. It would be grand. And these guys, I find, tend to be super positive. They tend to always be in giving advice and uplifting people, and they're never negative. The other type, however, that I also have on my channel are the type who are going to be upset at this video and who are going to say things like, oh, you should respect your elders and you're going to end up like me one day, you should have empathy, yada, yada, yada. I don't care about you. You're the shitty type of boomer. You are the problem I'm attacking with this video, and you complaining and acting like a damsel in distress because I'm finally showing you your flaws should be a wake-up call for you to stop being such a piece of shit. It's time for you to actually fulfill your role as an elder and lead the way and not just be a toxic pile of disappointment again, and again. Because every channel has that, but it's not just the subscribers, it's the people who run the channels as well. You have channels with good grandpas, and I don't even have to tell you names. I'm sure that you can think back to people that are like this. But then you also have the channels that are ran by washed up losers who aim to just demoralize people. So on one hand, you have people who are doing their best to motivate, and you have the ones who are trying their best to demoralize. Tell me, what is the difference between the two? Usually, the ones who are trying to uplift are the ones with a successful life and no regrets, and the other ones are jaded and full of bitterness, and they want to turn the entire world like them. They don't want anyone to have a good time. And again, I'm sure you can think back to these guys in their 40s and 50s on YouTube Fitness with channel where you think back and you're telling yourself, okay, what exactly is your purpose? Like the only thing you're doing is discouraging young men, giving them shit advice, or just being a dick for the sake of being a dick. A common trait with these guys I found is that they constantly try to present themselves as badasses, and they also are extremely dogmatic, meaning that it's their way or the highway. And it's something that Zoomers reproach to boomers all the time. It's their inflexibility and inability to understand that not everyone is like them, not everyone thinks like them. And to give good advice to people, you need to have some breathing room. You can't just say, do this until the end of times, and we just continue like this and no one changes. That is terrible advice. And they also have traits that make them immediately recognizable. For example, anyone who calls you son or kid on YouTube Fitness is trying to make you seem and appear lowly and unworthy because of your age. And that's something that always rubbed me the wrong way, for one simple reason. We're somehow supposed to respect them because they're old, but they don't respect us because we're young. Ever since I was a kid, this is a mindset I could never wrap my head around. It transcends just boomers. It's everything in life. Why exactly are you superior than me just because you're older? That makes no sense. You just happened to be born earlier. How does it make you a better person than me? It doesn't. And I believe that the entire idea that you're supposed to respect your elders is based on the need to maintain a hierarchical order so that society doesn't collapse. Because if young people stopped just blindly listening to people who are just 20 years older, then there would be a massive change in the way we actually work as a society, if you think about it. And I'm not telling you to just tell your mom to fuck off and call her a cunt and do whatever you want, but I'm saying that outside of people who have your best interest in mind, like your parents, for example, if they're good parents, for the rest of the world, I don't care that you're older than me, grandpa. I'm not related to you, so I'm not going to take any advice from you, especially if you have a bad attitude. And on top of that, the very idea that I owe you respect is something that is earned. No one on earth is entitled to your respect. It's something that you gain and that you can lose. And a lot of boomers have lost everyone's respect because of the way they act. Since age means absolutely nothing, I can tell you that. What matters is the experience you accumulated. Okay, cool, you were on Earth 20 years longer than I was. What did you do with those 20 years? Did you do something interesting? Can you teach me something? Because if you can't, you can kindly go fuck yourself. You have absolutely nothing on me. If anything, you're worse than me. When I meet some of these guys, and I'm sure that you have these experiences, with boomers in the gym. You meet them and you're like, okay, you spend twice as much time on this earth as me, you have nothing to show for it, I am strictly better than you in every aspect. So why again should I listen to you? Why should I believe your bullshit made up stories about you deadlifting 1,500 pounds but in secrecy and you showed no one? It makes no sense. If you get down to it, it truly is completely stupid. Because a 45-year-old with a dead-end job, a failed marriage, and no land is not better than you. If anything, your potential completely dwarfs the guy because it's going to be tough for you to not actually do better than this. The bar is set so low, and it's the reason why, again, they have to LARP, is because you are someone, if you're young, who has what they don't have, which is a future, quote unquote. You have time in front of you to not fuck up like they did. And they resent that. So they go back and they reinvent their history because I can tell you for a fact that all of these dudes who say they used to have these insane feats of strength, all of them spend their 20s and 30s on the couch doing nothing. It's never true. It is never true. You know why? I know strong dudes who used to be big. When they tell you these things, they either have proof to back it up or they don't say it at all because it doesn't matter if a younging knows or not. It's for them. They know what they accomplished. They don't need someone telling you. Again, I can tell you that with the amount of dudes I met in my life in gyms who apparently had world record numbers, I have met the world's strongest man 150 times. Like, how is it possible? Well, it's possible because they all function the same way. They're all dysfunctional old men who need to lie to feel better about themselves. And they need to lie and flex to teenagers. And that is when we get from sad to just downright pathetic. Can you imagine having to invent a made-up life and telling that to a kid you just met who doesn't care? If that is not one circle of hell or another, I don't know what that is. The age thing also comes down to kids being stupid, and that I understand. It's the big pushback against the okay boomer meme. It is true that kids are stupid, right? I was a kid, I was stupid. When I think back at what I was like and what I believed when I was 16, I cannot believe the stupidity that existed in my brain. But it's fine for them to be stupid because they're brand new on the earth. When I meet some of these dudes who are like 50 and who behave like teenagers and who are just as stupid, I'm like, okay, you don't have an excuse because you spent all of that time on earth. What did you do for those 40 years? You never opened the book or watched a documentary or tried to learn anything? Did you just watch football for the past 3 decades and that's it? That's all you did? You have nothing to show for? It truly is sad in a sense because again, you meet these guys and they're empty and you're like, wow, your life is working a shitty job and then going home and hating your wife. That's your life. And again, I'm supposed to take advice from that. How exactly are you a leader or an elder that I'm supposed to look up to? It's impossible because anyone who values anything related to virtue cannot find virtue and value in these individuals. And for the kids watching out there, I also want you to know that you might be 14-year-olds, but you might also be much better off than some guy who's in his 60s. It doesn't mean that you need to stop growing as a person because you might end up like him, but it does mean that, again, I want you to vividly and actively reject anyone who's trying to just muscle you into believing that they know better just because they're old. Respect is not something that you gain with age. Again, that notion just escapes me completely. It is directly correlated with your actions and not your status or the number on your driver's license. But that is linked and that leads us directly to the reason why they do that. It's not just that they lie, it's that the very identity that they created as a boomer is a defense mechanism. And lying is only a part of it. Because the very important factor of it all is their age. It's the reason why they insist so much on I'm old, and you should respect me. Is because they try to turn what is essentially a disadvantage into a strength. Because you see, if you're 60 and full of wisdom, like some of these grandpa figures out there, then your age is actually a good thing because it's a number that is directly correlated with your experience. But if you did fuck all for 50 years, now it's an hindrance because you're 50 and you have nothing to show for it. So what they do is they try to turn that again into an advantage, and they'll say things like, oh, well, I can't do this or do that, but it's because I'm old. Again, you met some of these guys. Oh, I have a bad shoulder, I have a bad knee, I have a bad back. It's because I'm old. Oh, what a convenient excuse. And the worst part is that they're trying to make you believe that you're going to end up like them. And this is when we get into the cultural aspect of it, which transcends the meme of the boomer. Because in reality, being a boomer is a disease. It's not something that you're born with, it's something that you're infected by via your lifestyle or via the influence of others. And boomers are like zombies. Instead of biting you, they talk to you and they inject their poison in your brain. And that poison is what I call the age cope. Well, they'll tell you things again like you'll see when you get old, you start getting pain, you can do things that you used to do, you're weaker, etc., etc. All of that is strictly a lie that they tell themselves to feel better because they try to present age as this inevitable curse that is going to just mangle your body and crush it into dust. And that's just not true. For a simple reason. How does it make any sense from a survival standpoint for human beings to fall apart as they age at the rate that is presented by boomers? I'm not telling you that you're going to be spring and effective in your 90s, although you could if you took care of yourself, but the idea that your body starts to just disintegrate when you're past 18 is just wrong and just scientifically untrue, artistically incorrect, and across the board toxic. It's poison. There's no better term to describe it. And it is more damaging than you might think because this type of mindset is contagious, as I said, because it's a very easy and useful excuse. If you can blame all of your problems, all of your shitty lifts and your shitty physique on age, then suddenly it's not your fault. Suddenly whatever happens is not because of you, it's just age. It's that ticking number that has decided that, oh, you get fat, oh, you have no muscle, your arms look like spaghettis, you have a beer belly, you can't bend over anymore. That's just age, right? It's just ingrained in the human body that you just lose function when you reach 19. The day you reach 19, that's it, the clock is ticking and you're just falling apart. Sure. They say that, of course, because it's an excuse that makes them feel better about themselves, because that way they can just reject responsibility for the sorry state of their life. But I have seen something that personally concerns me a ton with this, and that is that the age cope gets worse every single year without fail. Meaning that I vividly remember being a kid, like 9 or 10, and listening to adults, and adults would say things like, oh, you'll see when you're 50, your body starts hurting when you wake up, etc., etc. Then I was like 13 or 14, and men were saying the same thing about their 40s. Oh, when you're 40, you don't have any libido anymore, and you have no energy anymore, okay? Then I was 17, 18, and men were starting to say that about their 30s. Oh, when you're 30, you can't really lift, and you can't build muscle, and it's all for nothing, etc. And now I'm much older, I'm 27, and I hear people say that about my age. I hear people my age say, oh, after 25, it's all downhill from here. Do you see what's going on? The age is regressing. The age of annihilation of the body is moving back every single year to a point where I can tell you that today there are people who think that males peak when they're in their teens and after that it's just destruction. Like you're supposed to look your best at 17 and then it's over. What? This is in direct contradiction with reality, and it is getting to an alarming level of stupidity because we are at the point where teenagers are going to be talked into just falling apart again because it's the way nature is supposed to happen, but that is incorrect. And it's incorrect on so many levels because if you look at the state of the anabolic male, yes, there is a peak of testosterone production in your teens. Of course, it's puberty. Puberty is pretty potent. But after that, even though the peak decreases, can you really tell me that it leads to decrease in muscle mass? Don't answer that question yet. I'm going to check the time and we're going to get back to it after I'm done. Excellent. So keep that question in mind because we're going to get back to it. That very age group that is being led by the ideology I just described is being vehiculated via culture. It's just people talking to you. It's the boomer at your gym, it's your dad, it's your coworker. They put that stuff into your brain. And look at what it did. Look at what the drivel turned society into. Look at the average male. Have you seen these seals? Have you seen these men? When I go out in public, I am terrified. Terrified. And I know I live in an area of the world where there's a lot of fat people, but it blows my mind. I'm thinking to myself, okay, you're 25, you had 25 years on this earth. How did you manage to get so big? How are you so obese? Do you have a full-time job eating pizza? How is it possible that you ballooned up in weight at this point? I recently went to a party with a bunch of 30-year-olds, okay? Early 30s. Out of 15 dudes, 2 were in shape. It was me and an army guy. All of the other ones were a mix of skinny fat or downright obese, like advanced obesity in their early 30s. What exactly in your life has made you turn into that? Well, it's this. It's boomer core. It's the way boomers have invaded culture. They have turned everyone's standards all the way down. And now when you think about your average male, what do you think of? Some pudgy dude with like a double chin and no muscular definition. Is it really what we want for life? Look at the dad bod. I think the dad bod is the perfect representation of what I'm talking about. The idea that it's acceptable to have a beer belly in your 20s personally disgusts me. And if you're watching this video and you have a beer belly and you're in your 20s, change your ways. This is not normal. Stop listening to society who tells you, oh, you're beautiful the way you are. You're not. You're repulsive and you know it. Look at yourself in the mirror. There's no smile on your face, okay? There's just disgust. And rightfully so. Use that disgust, get rid of that fat. It's unsightly. But worse than that, dad bod. Listen to the semantics. Dad bod. What does it mean? It means that once you become a dad, it's acceptable to just let go. It's acceptable to just become a fat fuck that never moves, right? How? When you're a dad is when you should be the most anabolic because you have kids to show a good example too. That's when you should actually redouble your efforts in the gym. You should try to be bigger, try to be a better male figure for your kids to look up to. Even if they're female, daughters need strong male figures in their life. Dudes that don't have that, look at the way they turn out. Usually it's not pretty to look at. Same for the males. So it's your duty as a father to stay strong and to stay big. And on top of that, what just irks me to the umpteenth level is the fact that a lot of the time, the people who have dad bods are not even dads. So not only did you normalize the fact that it's okay for dads to be fat and pudgy, but on top of that, you're letting 20-year-olds who don't have kids or any responsibility and who are just studying in college get fat and call themselves dad bod, and you're trying to make that into an attractive trait. You know why I'm not too worried about it? It's because it's never going to work. Because biologically it makes no sense. Women are never going to find that attractive. But what bothers me and what I find disgusting and dangerous is the fact that males are going to fall for it because it's comfortable. Oh yeah, eat pizza 3 times a week and just drink beer whenever and just have a dad bod. What does it matter? It matters because then you end up like one of the fat fuck I went to that party with who they had a dad bod in their early 20s. I'm just partying, bro. And then you're 25 and you're now severely overweight. And then you're in your 30s and you're obese. Guess what? You have 10 years left. Fat people, obese people don't make it to their 40s. What a great life. Thank you, boomers, for inspiring an entire generation to turn into pieces of shit. With your low fucking standards that you put in place because you accomplished nothing with your life and you poisoned an entire generation of people. But it gets worse. It gets way worse because that toxic mindset doesn't stop. As I said, just like with the age cope that is constantly regressing, it's the same here. 25-year-olds have guts nowadays. When do you think 20-year-olds are going to have guts? When do you think kids are going to be just obese as a default state? Well, it's coming faster and sooner than you think. Because the idea that your body eventually falls apart is stupid, but it's pervasive. Because as I said, it's comfortable. It's an excuse you can sit back on and think, oh, it's not my fault, it's just the way it's supposed to be. Sure. Beyond that, as I said, the teenage year being the peak also presents your high school period as the time of your life where you should be at your max. Like you should be, again, peaking in high school. And that's nonsense, but it's very damaging to tell that to kids because it rushes them. It tells them, okay, you have your teenage years and then it's over, so you better enjoy it. It's the reason why you have people who live for 2 years and then they just become black pilled and they say, oh, it's over for me. Well, yeah, because you've been sold the idea that past 19 you couldn't build muscle anymore. I know people who believe that. Why? Because you always have smarty pants who tell them, hey, you produce a lot of tests in your puberty, but after that it crashes, so you can't rebuild muscle anymore. That's nonsense. Why is it nonsense? For a very simple and logical reason. One that many people do not grasp or understand. Let me explain to you why it makes no sense. You become a man when you're middle-aged. Why? Because you are spending time in an anabolic environment. Let me explain more. In this situation, yes, there is a peak of testosterone during puberty, and then it tempers down. Of course, it's a peak, supposed to temper down, but then it doesn't do this. It does this peak, goes here, maybe here, and then it does this. All right, it stabilizes. Now tell me this, between that peak here and this portion here, which one is more important for muscle growth? This one. Okay, because there's a peak. So if you were to actually flatten the curve of the peak, it would make for a longer distance between this and this. Now let me ask this again. The peak lasts for 3 years. I selected a period of 3 years that correlated with the peak. What about this? 6 years. What is more important, the peak or 6 years? 6 years. Why? Because if you turn the 6 years into a peak, it would be a higher peak than the puberty peak. And that is something that people don't grasp. Again, think about this in these terms. Your body is soaked in testosterone. Okay? Puberty just drops buckets and buckets of test in your bloodstream. So you're exposed to more tests. But after that, even if the test reduces, you're still exposed to tests. And time is still clocking. The clock is still ticking and you're still exposed to tests. And if you keep training, guess what happens to the body? You experienced a peak during puberty, during which you built a lot of muscle mass that you didn't lose magically because you weren't on drugs. The drop was not as consequent as someone who's off cycle. Therefore, you maintain all of it and you also build more with time because you become more and more anabolic. Why? Not because you suddenly produce more tests, although I do believe that it makes you more anabolic to train, but because you spend more time in it. And if you don't believe me, let me use 2 examples that are going to shatter your doubts. Again, look at a steroid cycle that is much more potent than puberty. A lot of people call it second puberty. It's more than that. It's much more powerful than puberty because look at the amount of hormones they inject. It's not even comparable. If you take a skinny, scrawny kid and you put them on a shit ton of drugs and they're a good responder, will they turn into a massive hunk of muscles? The answer is no. Why? Because one cycle is not enough. The big dudes are massive because they spend years blasting a ton of drugs. They spend years with a very high testosterone level. So their body is soaked in it constantly. It's the constant that makes the mass. It's not the peak. So that's one thing. The second thing is even more poignant. Look at trans people. Let's say a woman wants to actually transition into a male and she starts taking male hormones that her body doesn't produce. How long does it take that person to finish the transition? Years. Years and years and years of non-stop cycles. Okay, they don't cycle off. It's non-stop hormonal intake that eventually leads to massive physical changes. Do they turn into a man with a 15 inches dong and a beard after one cycle? No, it takes again years. So the very idea that you make your best gains during puberty and that after that it's for nothing is stupid. If anything, puberty is a given. You live during it or not, who cares? Lifting afterwards is what's going to matter. That's when you're going to build most of your muscles. And that period, I'm sorry for all of the boomers that told themselves that, I'm 30 and I have low test. That period lasts between your 20s and your 50s. During that time, you got 30 years where your hormonal profile never crashes, it stabilizes fairly well with a very slow decrease. And the decrease, yes, starts after puberty because again, puberty is a peak. There's only a way to decrease from there. But if you look again at from 20 to 50 and you don't look at the puberty peak, it's fairly stable. And some individuals even see heightened test levels in their 30s, mid 30s, and sometimes 40s. So all of that nonsense about, oh, if once you're 25 it's over is just a lie. But if you believe in that lie, guess what's going to happen to you? You are going to end up a boomer, just like them. Boomers who might I had ended up with the bodies they have and the shitty test levels they have because they spend their Sundays watching football and eating chips instead of being physically active. Guess what? You get the body that you deserve. You spent 15 years doing nothing and going to the gym once a week to bench one plate. You get the body that correlates with that level of activity. There is no surprise there. So now that this big ass rant about hormonal profile is over, let's get again into the cultural midst of that boomer cake. If I can find my line, because right now I'm actually scrapping. So this is what I said. The fact that test levels crashing is a cop-out. It's a fatalist mindset and it's complete bullshit. Reject it with everything you have. It's the black pill. You don't want that. You can also cite all of idiot things that they come up with, like squats being bad for your knees. That's boomer 101. Again, I don't know why they love saying that. They say that because they're fat, inactive, and they have knee pain. And then they squat too much with shit form and they say, oh, it must be the squats. Sure, RV, it's the squats. It's not the fact that you barely walk at all and you spend your days on the couch. Yeah, blame the squats. Or that lifting is not good for longevity because their body hurts. Again, same logic, their body hurts because they're inactive. That is what. All of that leading to something that some of my subscribers actually alerted me to I wasn't really aware of, which is the big TRT commercial push. I have subscribers again in their 30s who told me that they're being bombarded with TRT ads, left and fucking right. They're in their 30s. They don't need hormonal replacement therapy. They are still at the peak of their production, as I said. So why are they being showed that? Because you have a bunch of boomers who are in their 30s who can't produce a drop-off test to save their lives, who haven't had a hard-on for like 5 years, and who need that because they completely killed their hormonal profile. Does it mean that they need TRT? No, they need to fix their heads, but they'll use TRT as a cop-out to feel better. And then you end up with, again, a great generation of boomers on YouTube Fitness who know jack shit about training and nutrition because they're just taking TRT and looking big of it because they have constant test levels now. Magical, they build mass without even having to train. And they feed that type of advice to younger kids who are going to fall for that too. Because I'm seeing kids in their like late teens who are envisaging jumping on TRT because their test levels are crashing. Like, you expect it to go through puberty for the rest of your life? What type of entitled, spoiled bullshit is that? But that mindset comes from boomers. No teenager thought to themselves, oh, let me jump on drugs. No, boomers put that in their heads. The idea that it was needed in the first place. It is not needed. But the problem is that it's so vicious because if you fall for that nonsense and you take those drugs and you're like in your like 19 or 20, it's over because you're going to kill your hormonal production. So in a sense, you will become the very thing you try to avoid, a male with no testosterone production. And a self-destructing prophecy will have been born, all thanks again to boomers. I say it from the bottom of my heart, I despise these people. It's the reason why I made this video. And if we continue, and also to just, in a sense, wrap up, because with all that I've already said, it should already be obvious, but I need to reiterate. Are these the people who are supposed to take advice from? Like, don't get me twisted. I respect my elders, but only if they're worthy of respect. And the problem is that in this case, are they? Can you tell me with a straight face that I'm supposed to take advice from these idiots? I can't. And in a sense, we're all left fatherless. Well, we're supposed to have people to guide us. We're not supposed to just guess it. But the generation that is supposed to guide us is actively misleading us constantly and creating traps for us to fall into because they fell into it too. It's like if someone fell into a hole and instead of shouting to people, hey, don't come here, there's a hole, they're telling you, hey, come down there, there's burgers. Like, what type of shitty mindset and just attitude is that to have? But on YouTube, it's also represented because you ever wondered why the average age of the fitness YouTubers is so low? Why is everyone so young? Everyone is in their 20s and 30s. The fuck? Aren't we supposed to take advice from older, wiser men? Why are you on this channel taking advice from me? I'm 27. I was born yesterday. And yet I give better advice than most of these people. Why? Well, because they're stupid boomers. That's why. So Zoomers are going to get better information from me than from these guys, which is not normal. Again, I wish I could look up to these guys on YouTube, but they're not there. They are not there. Every single YouTuber I respect is usually around my age. And that's not normal. Again, we've been robbed of something very precious. The ability to, again, have elders. That has been robbed from us completely because they're not worthy of our respect. I know what people say again, oh, you'll be old too one day and we owe them respect. We don't owe them shit. They're not worthy of that respect. I've already proven that to you. And they actively try to sabotage us, as I said. I don't think they're just stupid. I think they're mean and stupid. Because they want us to be like them. I think it's really what they want. And they're succeeding, by the way. Because their failures have become the norm. I explained that with the dad bod. They truly have managed to make everyone like them. And that is something that at this point I'm thinking is irreversible because it is, again, so deeply ingrained in the culture that I'm having a tough time trying to decipher how we're going to get out of this in reality. But the many lies and the many things they said also impact other aspects. And this is when I'm going to stray away from lifting, but you're going to see that it has a lot of values. But before that, I'm going to check the phone because it's making strange noises. Nope, we're still on the air. So the pamphlet against boomers can continue. So, outside of the sabotage and the fact that they want us to be like them, I also have noticed other aspects of everyday life that boomers have sabotaged and destroyed for us. The best example being marriage. How many older men do you know who tell you that they hate their life and they should have never gotten married? It's the entire the ball and chain, as if getting married was the pits. Like it's the worst thing in the world and you should never get married. Why do they say that? Well, because most likely they got into shitty rushed marriages with people that they don't like. But see, instead of just admitting that they had the lack of foresight to select a shitty mate and now they hate their lives, no, they decide to just say, oh, the entire institution of marriage is garbage and avoid it. And look at what it created. Men going their own way. A bunch of dudes who have decided that their calling in life was going to reject women, which is just sad because as a male, as a female, we exist with the other gender, we complete each other. We need each other. And in reality, if you refuse to engage with the other gender, you are playing the game of those who are trying to destroy the family, or trying to destroy our society. So in reality, boomers, who tend to be traditional, they tend to be more conservative, actually they are playing the game of the people trying to destroy what they say they like. But at the end of the day, again, we're supposed to look up to these fuckers for family values. The same dude who tells you that he hates his wife, really? That's the guy. I don't respect those guys. I have zero respect in my heart for these people because they are the reason why young men are afraid to get married nowadays. They're the reason why young men jump on TRT and just let themselves go. It's because they're just copying the previous generation because we're just going to be as shitty as them, I guess. We're not going to try and be better. You know, it's that entire thing where people say, oh, the old generation always complains that the youngins suck. Yeah, I'm the younging and I say fuck him because they suck. And I can also look down and say that the Zoomers suck too. See, I don't like boomers and I don't like Zoomers because I'm perfect and everyone else sucks. Clearly. But in this situation, it is interesting to see that I'm not the only one who shares that mindset. Look at the amount of, again, anti-boomers memes. Some of it is not justified at all, but a lot of them come from what I just described. It's that feeling of betrayal. We've been betrayed. We looked up to these guys and they just failed us completely. And not just failed us. If they could have just shut their mouth and done nothing, it would have been acceptable, but no. They had to go the extra mile and actually poison our mind. Thank you very much. And that is, of course, because their lives suck and we should pity them. This is the part where I'm going to bring out the tearjerkers and I'm going to calm down a little bit and let go of all of that contempt and disgust for boomers. And I'm going to be telling you a story that I think is going to resonate with you, because even though I've been attacking boomers nonstop, again, I understand where it's coming from. They themselves have had problems in their lives and they are sadly taking it out on us and making us like them. But it's because their stories are tragic in a sense. You see, for boomers, it hasn't always been easy, and I have met some whose stories I want to share with you. And the one I'm going to select for today is an encounter I had with an old man on the bus. It was in Paris, and there was an older gentleman who was quite dapper, and he had a nice white mustache, and he was properly dressed. And he was just having a good time in the bus. I wasn't talking to him directly. He never came to me to talk about his past exploits or anything. But at some point, the bus stopped, and he had to get off, and he couldn't get off by himself because he was at an age where he was too weak, and the step was too high of the bus, and he could fall and break a hip, which could spell death. And so he had to be helped down the bus, and I helped because I was one of the biggest person in that bus. And I remember helping him down the bus, and he had tears in his eyes. And almost involuntarily, he started shouting, and he started telling us, when I was young, I could squat 200 kilos, and I was big, and I was such a fine young man. And at that moment, in my heart there was no hate. I didn't feel like, oh, fuck that boomer with his stupid made-up story. No, because he wasn't talking to me. He wasn't talking to anyone. He was reminiscing about the glory days. He was thinking back to a time where he was actually strong and capable, and he was missing those days because now he couldn't even get off the bus. And it broke his heart to not even be able to do something so basic. And at that moment, I felt for him. And I was like, man, and now I understand better. It's the reason why I made the clear distinction between the toxic boomers and the ones who are just in it. Like they're old and that's it. Because it's true that old age is terrifying. And on top of that, when you get bullied by Zoomers constantly, and people who have all of their life in front of them who tell you, oh, shut up, grandpa. Yeah, I understand that it's extremely frustrating because when your glory days are over, thinking back to them is maybe the last thing you have left. And that leads directly to a saying that I find incredibly sad, touching, but also very true and relevant, and one that I want you to take to heart. That saying is this: La vieillesse est un long naufrage. What it means is old age is a slow sinking ship. And what it means is that it's not something that happens one day, you wake up and you're old, as I said, but it's slow. It's a slow slope and you are slowly degrading as a person till one day you wake up and you don't even recognize yourself. You don't recognize the body you grew up in and you're just stuck because there's no going back. And at that point, yes, your life is truly over. And for a lot of people, they cannot cope with that because it's just traumatizing. And it's beyond just physical strength. I have seen that happen to people I love and respect. People who are strong-willed men and women who with age degraded to the point that if their past self could meet them as they aged, they would be ashamed. Because they turned their backs on everything they believed. They started just shitting on all the values they used to defend. All of that because, again, age just sucked everything out of you. It is the great killer. C'est effectivement un long naufrage. And a good example that I want to use because it's related to fitness is Arnold. Look at Arnold, man. Look at him when he was young. Look at what he stood for. Look at his energy and charisma. Look at him now. The dude debased himself. He became a politician, a sellout. He stole money. He destroyed the state. And now look at the stuff he's spouting in public, saying shit like, fuck your freedom. Do you think we're looking at Arnold? Do you think this is Arnold? I personally don't believe it is. I think we're looking at the corpse of Arnold, meaning that he's already dead. His spirit and the person he used to be is dead, and that is because he aged. And with age came greed. With age came also a certain desire to just last. But when you're at the point where you just live for the sake of living longer, there's not much left for you on this earth. And you end up becoming something that you thought you were never going to become. It's that Batman thing. I think it's you live long enough to become the villain or something like this. It's so true, but it's also very scary because age decays virtues and principles until you're left nothing but an empty husk. Just a husk with nothing left. And I have another story for that, because if the guy on the bus was like a virtuous boomer and I felt for him, and Arnold is someone that I don't personally know, so I can say shit about the guy, I just can say that I don't like the guy that he became. I have another story about an actual boomer, someone who wasn't that old. See, I knew a guy who was extremely rich, and he had a boat. And I remember a time where he invited me on his boat, and his wife was there. And he was maybe in his 50s, and I was in my late teens. And at some point, I was supposed to like pull a rope to like raise something, I don't know, boats. And I remember him telling me to do it, and me doing it, and it was really, really tough. But eventually managing to do it, and him looking at me with like almost hatred in his eyes. And his wife ended up laughing because she said, "Oh, you forgot to remove like the clip, because technically the rope wasn't pullable. You were supposed to remove a security to be able to pull." And what the guy had done is he had set the security and told me to pull so that he could make fun of me when I wouldn't be able to. But I just brute strength my way out of it, and I broke his fucking security. And I remember him being mad at me, but in that moment I thought, man, your life is so miserable and you lack manliness so much that you felt the need to posture in front of your wife and humiliate a teenager by making him do something impossible that he ended up being able to do, breaking your shit in the process, and then you got mad. That's the type of poisonous mindset that I'm letting you know right now is seeping into your bones if you let it. Because it's not just there as you age, it's cultural again. It's something that you develop. It's that boomer core that boomer kind possesses. And so that was the story of the rich guy on the boat, who also was left with almost, no values. He had nothing. He was a husk of a man because strength left him and strength left them. All boomers are strengthless. It's what characterizes a boomer. And this is why they give themselves reminders and airs and postures, is because it's all they have left. And some people could tell me, okay, just let them do that. I will let them reminisce about the glory days if they stop destroying us in the process. Just like the old guy on the bus, you can do that for yourself, for your own sake. But don't do that to hurt others. Just don't. As an elder, you should help us. You shouldn't put us down. It's what I'm trying to get at. And I can admit to you guys that honestly, this terrifies me. The idea that I'm going to grow old and weak just scares the shit out of me. I'm not afraid of death, but I'm not afraid of death now. Meaning that I'm not afraid to die young and strong. I'm, however, deeply scared of aging into a body and a spirit and a mind that has just lost everything I used to be and just becomes despicable and weak and still hangs on and becomes like them. Because I know a lot of people will tell me, well, you said that about those boomers, but you're going to end up like one of them. And I'm afraid that you might be correct, but it's something that I'm going to try and avoid, because the last thing you want to become is like this. For the sake of the younger generations and for your own sake, you don't want to become like this. And yet it's a possibility. And this is why I'm personally terrified of it. Because I can tell you honestly that one, if I end up having only one thing left and it's the old days, then I think I'm better off dead. Because the glory of the past is not something worth living for. And on top of that, I can tell you that right now as I am, I vividly admit that I want to die before I get to that point. Meaning that if I could sign a contract right now that would just slay me before I get to that age, I would, in a heartbeat. Actually, I've had 2 discussions with my partner. One was about if I end up in a coma, what to do, and I told them to unplug me after a month, because I don't want to live as a vegetable, this is not a life I want. And 2, if I end up becoming like this jaded old man with nothing but toxicity, I want them to shoot me in the face. Of course, they won't do it, because they're too kind, but I wish they would. Because what really terrifies me is that I don't know if I'm going to have that same fortitude at that age. See, as I told you, old age is a slow sinking ship. And at some point you're on the ship and it's too late to jump, you're just sinking with it. What if I get to an age where that energy that I have right now, about telling myself I will never let myself get that weak, what if it just disappears? What if I become like one of these old guys who has nothing to live for but just lives for the sake of living? Then I won't have the fortitude to do that anymore. That's what scares me. Because as I am right now, young and strong, I firmly believe that those who cannot survive without help, like constant medications or someone to wipe your butt for you, these people shouldn't live. Because it's not living. You're already dead. You are already dead. If you cannot stand up from your bed or you're being wheeled in a wheelchair, you can't feed yourself, yeah, you're dead. That's it. It's over. There is no point in continuing. It is over. But imagine if you get trapped in that. Now it's too late for you to want to die, so you're stuck in this, but you're already dead. This is worse than death. It's a fate that I don't wish on my worst enemy, and one that I will certainly try to defend myself from entering at all cost. And this leads also to me understanding why most boomers I know suck, is because they are at that point. They're at the point where they don't have the balls to just live their life freely and strongly or not live at all, but they are also not strong enough to just live. So they're just there. They have no goal in life, and the last thing they do is to just destroy and curse the younger generation. It's the last thing they have left. And I know that we all age. Some people say, oh, you're going to age too. Yeah, we all age, but we don't have to get old. That's the difference. You can stay young in spirit and young in body if you stay active. The belief, again, that you're going to age and become a boomer is fatalistic nonsense. It is just not true. We don't have to become weak and deflated. We don't. We are young right now. Most of the people on this channel are young. And it is something that we can preserve. I can tell you that. And I'm going to end with a little something, or something that might horrify you, but that I find brings a lot of joy to my heart. In Japan, there is a massive epidemic of old people who at some point leave the family household to just walk into the forest and disappear. And the reason why they do that is because they realize that they cannot take care of themselves anymore and they are becoming a burden on their family and the youngings, so they just leave. Out of honor for their family, they tell themselves, okay, I'm a dead weight, it is time for me to go, my life has ceased, I cannot exist as a strong human anymore, so it's time for me to just quit. And so they go into the forest and just let nature consume them and they're never seen again. Some people look at that and think it's sad. I look at that and I think, what great virtue in these people. What incredible valor and bravery in this action of understanding when your time has come. If I could make a wish, my wish would be to be like this. The day I become a burden on my children is the day I will disappear from this wood and just give back to the earth, because I will have fulfilled my mission. I would have created a new generation, given what I can give, and when I am the one taking, it's when I'm gone. You take when you're children, when you're a baby. After that, it's all about building and giving back. The idea that we're supposed to revert back to infancy when we're old, fuck that. That's the time where you're supposed to die. And so I will leave you with these words that I find very inspiring. Go into the forest, live strong, die strong.